Welcome along, one and all, to round two of PSGL Season 39 PSF3, brought to you by GT Omega. After an exhausting opener in the desert of Bahrain, PSGL moves far to the west to a track that has given us so many unforgettable memories. Interlagos will play host to the Brazilian Grand Prix and round two of the championship. And running you through all the action this race will provide will, of course, be myself, Decker, and alongside me, as always, will be my good friend Ghost. How are you this evening?
Yeah, doing well, doing well. It's I was very surprised by the lack of stewards reports from Bahrain, to be honest, because we did say last week that we would update you all on when the stewards reports come out. There turned out to be only one that actually got deliberated on, and it was a penalty removal in the midfield. So yeah, no major changes to the order. Yeah, we're straight back for round two here in Brazil. What a circuit this is, Dakar. It's great to come here early in the season or late in the season. Any time in the season, really, it's great to be here. But, you know, Interlagos produces fantastic races, both in real life and in these sim races. So, yeah, really looking forward to this.
I am certainly sharing that view with you. Let's see how it is over one lap with IRT Nick getting his first lap kicked off for tonight into the Senna S, locking up that left front wheel, getting the car nicely turned into the apex though, onto that throttle pedal, pressing that overtake button and away to the Curva del Sol, and then down the Retro Costa towards the end of the first sector, and one of the major overtaking points on the track. This Interlagos turning in fifth gear, again locking up a little bit wide of where he wanted to be, I think, and nearly invalidates, manages to hold on to it though, heading uphill now to Ferradura, flicking it. It's just barely a lift on this game, incredibly high speed, then downshifting down into third gear, aggressively turning that wheel, then heading through Pinarino, difficult traction zone on an exit, straightening up the car, then heading in towards Bico de Pato, again flicking the car in to the apex third gear, another incredibly difficult traction zone. The car seemingly spins so easily as you head over that rise. Second sector time is a 50.9 to the first two sectors as he exits that critical traction zone again of Junshao, because it carries you all the way down to the line. The Williams driver, IRT Nick, opens up that DRS, now takes that shortest possible run to the line, and he will get the session kicked off with a fast time of
Whoa.
106.8 to kick this off. But there's many more times to go. In a short track like this, still lap times are going to come in. Well, you can see them already. They're coming in constantly.
That's a really quick opening time from IRT Nick. You know, someone's probably going to beat it, but I reckon that's going to put him very high up on this first run of laps. No one's beat it yet. Sam Van Marising the closest, within a tenth, just about. Mattia Manga up there in P3 as well. Lezad to P4 with his Kick Sauber teammate in P5. Matisse up to P6. The other Aston Martin of PLX goes to P2. The F4 champion really showing his worth in F3 so far. We're still early in the season, but he's really been impressive in these first two rounds. But Zinedine Hajjaj is going to be, I think, the main one to watch. AGK still in the pits, so it's the Haas driver, last week's race winner, and therefore championship leader, and newbie Zinedine Hajjaj. Let's see if he can beat that time from Nick. But yeah, prediction coming true straight away. That time from Nick, very strong indeed.
Yeah, for a banker lap, very impressive. And IRT Nick, well, on his day, on his track, he can be ferocious. But that second sector time from Zinedine, oh my goodness, that is rapid. Let's see what the final sector is going to produce for last week's pole setter and race winner. Of course, championship leader comes up towards the line. He is derating to the line, but this could be a massive statement. 106.5. This driver is simply a phenomenon. One lap in the race, you name it. And wow, a margin of more than 3/10 of a second. That lap from Nick is fast. Don't make any mistake about that. But Zinedine Hajjaj, well, I think that potentially over one lap, AGK is the only driver on this grid that can compete with that, because that is just monstrous. For even a final lap, could have been contending for pole position. But that, to kick off your session like that, Ghost, oh, that's going to be intimidating for the rest.
Yeah, I mean, here in PSF3, where it's so close between most of the grid, 3/10 is already a big gap, but 3/10 around a track like Brazil, where the laps are barely a minute long, is unbelievable from Zinedine Hajjaj. And yeah, that's going to take some beating. I agree with you. Only AGK has really got the skill to deal with that kind of lap time on this grid. But obviously the race can be different, as we saw last week in Bahrain. Zinedine may have gotten the win, but it was far from all his own way. Yeah, we'll have to see what the race holds, but yeah, I don't think qualifying is going to be within reach for pole position for anyone else other than those two today.
Yeah, they just have that edge over one lap. As you said, though, in the race it was different. Zinedine did have to fight for it. He had to close down Yves Mathieu in the closing laps after the Polish driver had a brilliant strategy, pitting earlier than virtually everyone in that leading train, and got a bit of a jump. Zinedine had to chase that down and managed to get the job done in the end, but it was close. And Mathieu, also another debutant, really impressive race. I think we were both commenting on that. That very, very accomplished drive after a poor start to the race, made way with that strategy call and moved up, nearly got the win, but just came unstuck on the final lap in the end. But Mathieu, another driver to watch, I imagine. Didn't get the best first lap in, but I imagine there's much more to come as we're getting more laps finally coming in. And first with AMS Devil, and the Haas reserve driver goes 5th with a solid lap, and behind was the McLaren of Vessel going into P11. So early laps still coming in. Obviously that lap time of Zinedine holding very strong, but his teammate for the night, Devil, who I believe is making his first appearance this season, with also a very strong lap going into P5 on a 7 flat. So getting into the 106s around this track is really the benchmark so far, but I imagine a lot of these drivers are capable of it, so everyone's going to have to keep improving, keep chipping away. A lot of drivers on 107.1s, but I think they're going to be coming 6.9s and 6.8s by the end of the session as these drivers continue to improve.
AGK of 50.8 in the middle sector. It's not quite as quick as Zinedine. It will be up there though. We'll see as he comes down towards the line. He's going to drain every last drop of that ERS as he heads down the final straight, hugs the wall, and it is very close. Well, it's not particularly close in terms of pure time. Nick, though, gets closer within 1.5 tenths, so maybe Nick can join the fight for pole today, but AGK on his first lap up to P3, just 2 tenths behind. Spyros also improves to P4, and Brazil is one of those tracks, Daka, where you can just find so much more time, but it's so difficult to do in a qualifying session because it's such a short track. You have to nail every single corner, and if you get one corner wrong, it can either mess up your whole lap or completely kill your momentum because every corner flows into the next one, especially in that middle sector.
Yeah, indeed, that middle sector, every corner leads into the next. Really starting here, I'm watching with Spyros, this turn 8, and then you get offline, your line's compromised here into Pinarino, and then you're going to be struggling for traction on the way out. So yeah, every single section of this track is it going to be a test for the drivers, and such close times, that execution is going to come into it big time. But Zinedine, of course, that big margin maybe doesn't need the flawless execution. He's got so much pace in hand. We shall see, though, further down the line. Still cars, of course, circulating out there on the circuit. As always, as I said, with a short lap, times are going to be coming in constantly. Yves Matisse is coming down the main straight now, but doesn't seem to be going all out as he was not actually draining the battery much at all. So he comes in to the pits, bails out of that lap. IRT Sieve, though, is I thought was going along with some intent, but actually dives to the pit lane as well. As Sam Van Marison gets a good improvement as well, goes 3rd on a 106.7. These lap times very impressive as we just tick past the halfway point in the session. But Sam Van Marison, who had a more anonymous race, you'd have to say, in Bahrain, did get involved in some squabbling in the first stint, but making a very good impression here. And as always, the pecking order in this league, I think, could be expected to change wildly from track to track.
Yeah, and Sam Van Marison obviously very unlucky last week as well with his wheel issue that he had midway through the race that we caught on the stream. But yeah, he could have finished a lot higher in that race if not for that. And I think he had a problem with it later in the race that we didn't catch as well. But yeah, up to P3, really showing what he can do now. Just 3 thousandths behind IRT Nick, but that lap from Zinedine Hajjaj still a long way clear of everyone else as he's just exiting the pit lane now to start his second run. But yeah, all the times very close as you'd expect here in Brazil. And I'm sure those at the back still have plenty of time to gain as well, as we've already seen from the likes of Maturish improving by 8 tenths on his second run. So yeah, a lot to find for these drivers out there. And disqualifying, well, we called it early from that lap from Zinedine Hajjaj, but it can, like we said, it can be hard to improve. Maybe he's done his best already, and maybe this will be closer than we think. Or he could blow everyone else out the water now with a 106.0 or something.
Oh, well, 106.0, wow, that's ambitious, but we'll see if that does somehow come to pass. A bit of a quieter point on the track right now. Vessel, I believe, is the furthest driver along, just coming out of that first sector right now, so we'll keep an eye on that. Vessel currently in P16, also did not have the start to the season that he was after. There was a lot of retirements in that opening round at Bahrain. So there's certainly a lot of drivers on the warpath looking for a bit of redemption, and that is what's going to be provided by this second round here at Interlagos. Of course, a completely different track from Bahrain, so we'll see if fortunes are going to turn for many of these drivers. Vessel heading through that second sector split, but some way down, I imagine, is not going to be an improvement in that one. NLR Felix 1 is also far along, making his season debut, but is also down at the moment on that time, not coming together. So behind, AGK Racing is also a quarter of a second down, and we're seeing that trend maybe as these drivers try and push the boundaries a bit more, mistakes start to creep in, and well, you've said it perfectly, Ghost, improvements very, very difficult to come by at this track, and already these runs as we get towards the final 6 minutes of the session are demonstrating that fact.
Yeah, it's tough when you know that you have time in you to find, but you just can't do it. Mattia Manga goes to P6 and then immediately gets usurped by OVR Nico in the V-Carb. But Zinedine, I mean, even Zinedine has had to back out of his latest attempt at a lap, so he's going again right now, just coming down the final straight to start his next run. 5 minutes to go in the session though. IRT Nick has spun, so yeah, the driver's definitely pushing the limits now in these closing minutes of this qualifying session. We're going to see more and more mistakes, I think. The two Kick Saubers improving. That was Lezad to P11. I think Sieb went to P10 as well in the Williams. So the improvements are coming in, but still no one can challenge that lap from Zinedine Hajjaj right now. What's he doing through Sector 1? The Haas driver, he's 1,000th of a second up. So he's basically entirely matching his previous best. We'll see if he can find something in the middle sector.
Heading up towards Ferradura now, flicking it in. We'll see if he's got enough battery and enough tyre life to see this one out. Of course, he will have time for another run after this because it is, of course, such a short track. And you can take advantage of that. I think Zvidek just improved to P7 there on a 6.8, just fractionally behind Nico. You can see how close the times are in that upper midfield. Zinedine had a bit of a scruffy run out of Pico to Pato. We'll see if it's reflected in the time. Oh! Into Chao, locking up the rears and going very sideways as Spyros, with a great improvement too, goes into P4, just again 100th of a second behind Sam. So Zinedine's second run falling apart there in the end and deciding to come in. He will have one final crack at it. We'll see if that time could be enough for pole, as we seem to be losing Felix from the session, which is a little bit of a concern. I think we also had issues, I believe, with Spyros earlier, one other driver, I can't quite remember why, but hopefully that's all sorted out in a due course and we don't have too many issues with it as we head into the final 4 minutes. Lots of drivers in the pit lane, so again, Ghost, it's that kind of calm before the storm, before these drivers really get kicked off out there looking for the fastest times possible.
Yeah, there are a lot of binned off laps in that middle or in these sort of second wave of runs. I think barely 5 or 6 drivers actually improved on that wave of runs. So it's really tricky, really hard to find that time. And even when you nail the first sector, because that's where the lap is sort of made to begin with. A lot of tracks, you know, if you're a little bit down on the first sector, you can find some time later on. But on this track, it just kills your momentum all the way down to turn 4, and you can be so far down if you don't get sector 1 perfect. And we can see Matisse losing the rear through turns 1 and 2, and that's lap over immediately, just demonstrating my point perfectly. So yeah, we'll see what they can do. 3 minutes to go, and they're just going to get one more run at it, I think. Zinedine Hajjaj, other than his teammate, the first out there on circuit, although Devil has lost a front wing. I don't know how he's managed that. Probably coming out the pits, he has messed up somewhere, and he's going to be right on the edge for actually getting another lap in here. And just look at these time stacker. Devil is less than half a second behind Zinedine Hajjaj, and he's 16th. I mean, if that doesn't... I know Brazil's a short track, but if that doesn't demonstrate how close this division is, I don't know what will.
It's phenomenally close from second down to 16th. That's less than 0.3 of a second. Of course, there's a couple of outliers, as you normally find in Zinedine. Well, one of those outliers is going to be the first driver to get a competitive final run in. So he did have enough time to get turned around, and we'll see what this final run is going to provide for the Frenchman, who crosses the line now and gets this final run kicked off. Uphill run to Senna S, downshifting down into 4th gear, takes a narrow entry line, maybe a little wide of the optimal line. Of course, I'm trying to be as critical as possible with a driver this strong. Now heading down towards the end of the first sector, and immediately just backing off that. So that, again, he feels that was it. That was the limit, and he lost too much in that opening exchange of the lap to believe that he could go any further. Matisse ahead, invalidated. So these final runs, a lot of them are falling apart. AGK Racing, though, is out there on the track, has used a lot of battery to kick off the lap. Uphill run towards Ferradura. Let's see what the Romanian has to offer. 6th at the moment, flying through Ferradura, then heading up towards turn 8. Very aggressive on that braking zone, flicks the car in, then in towards the turn 9, keeps a nice tight line and straightens up that exit. Great technique. Then heading up towards Vico de Pato, again sliding the rear end under braking, then taking advantage of some of that rear locking to get that car rotated strongly. Let's see what the second sector is looking like. It's fast, it's very fast, that's right in contention. He locks up through Jun Shao and slides on the exit. He is pushing to the absolute limit, but will it be enough? It's just over 2/10 from Zinedine's pole time. It will surely be enough for at least P2, but will it snatch away pole position at the death for AGK Racing? Yes, it does! AGK Racing takes away provisional pole, and surely, well, we'll see if anyone can get anywhere near that time. Phenomenal lap for the qualifying master of PSF3. Still so many more times to go onto the board, though. Let's see who's going to be the first to step up to the plate. I believe it's going to be Sam van Marsing, though, at that time, and not going to come to pass 3 seconds down then. So behind we look towards the Williams. Well, Nick is just about going to be able to cross the line. His teammate in front of him, Sieb, is 12th. Nick goes at 4th place now, just starts off his final flying run behind Nico with a slight improvement to P7 there, and behind it's the Aston Martin PLX just getting a lap time kicked off. Let's see what these runs are going to go through with TGS Spyros. Then can he find just a minute improvement? No, remains in P6 behind the Ferrari of Naples. 16th. Zinedine invalidated, so that looks like AGK has a severe upper hand at the moment. We'll see if it's going to hold out. Lezad, the Greek driver, is half a tenth down and looks to be pit lane bound to bring this session to a close. Vessel in 17th at the moment goes up into 12th, and is that going to be it? The Mercedes then next up of Zvajdek comes in, his teammate Matthias, who of course took that brilliant second place in Bahrain, but this lap doesn't look like it's going to be anything too spectacular. He does go into 9th position to bring his session to an end. Sam van Marsing is next up, 5th at the moment, could at least go onto the second row with this, and goes even into 3rd position, just pipping Mattia Manga, who improved out of sight line for myself, but gets a very respectable 4th place at the moment. Is that going to be it? I wonder. Lap times are invalidated all across the board, and AGK Racing with a huge final lap takes away pole position from Zinedine Hajjaj. Another epic qualifying duel between the two of them, but this time it goes the Romanians' way.
It certainly does, and wow, I mean, I know a 10th is a lot around Brazil, but it really It bodes well for this race, doesn't it, Daka? I mean, less than half a second between the top 17 drivers. And remember, Felix disconnected. He only got one lap. So I'm sure he will be in the fight as well. This promises to be an incredible race. I cannot wait, as Interlagos usually is. But yeah, it is AGK Racing on pole position for the first time this season, and I'm sure it won't be the last. Zinedine Hajjaj on the front row with him for the second week running, and then it's Sam Van Mersing and Mattia Manga, both very impressive qualifyings from them. On the second row, Nick and Spyros make up row 3, and then it's Nico, PLX, Mateusz and Viadek, the two Mercedes, on the 5th row together. Then it's Ruben, Vessel, Sieb, Lezad, and then if I could scroll down, there we go, Matisse, Napple, Devil, and of course Felix at the back, but he only got one shot at it. So this is going to be fantastic. 16 drivers in the 106s, Daka. You said getting in the 106s would be the benchmark today. I think that was just to get near this grid. So yeah, fantastic stuff. Amazing pace, amazing closeness of the grid, and we're in for a cracker.
Yes, certainly. Yeah, getting in the 106 is clearly just the requirement to be competitive on this grid. It's certainly not something I could do. I don't believe so. Yeah, just demonstrating how high the level is across the board here in at PSF3. And again, that promises to be a great race to come. So do not go anywhere. We've got a show for us later on. Just as a quick side note, NLR Felix, one who disconnected actually, his power went out in his home. He has managed to get it back on. Don't know if you could manage to invite him potentially. I'm not sure if anyone else could, so that'd be great if you could try and seek him out. I'm not sure if he's back in the lobby or not, but I don't believe he is. I haven't seen it anyway, but yeah, hopefully that's all sorted out and we can get things going just as normal very, very soon. So yeah, that should just about do it for now, and we look forward to the race. And well, I want to talk about the way racing works around this track, Ghost, because, well, of course it is. As per usual, you'll talk about the DRS trains kicking in, and obviously those action zones towards the Senna S and the Sierra del Lago do provide a lot of opportunities. But even in that middle sector, and I think if you think back to the last round at Bahrain and how close everyone was running out there on track, that will provide plenty of opportunities to move up and down the grid as well through that tight middle section.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we'll see plenty of dive bombs in the middle sector, especially into those slow corners, the ones that open up into small little straights. I think we're going to have drivers try and stay in formation to start with. Although I did say that about Bahrain, and then everyone went crazy straight away in the first stint. So who knows? But you know, maybe the initial season nerves are settled now, and they'll start getting into a rhythm a little better. But I think the midfield drivers are going to want to move up the grid, and they're going to look for opportunities to do so. So you might see those kinds of dive bombs early on, because the DRS train down to turn 1, there's not too much you can do unless you burn a bunch of ERS, and then you leave yourself vulnerable anyway. So yeah, I think there's a lot of tactics that are going to be involved here with the grid this close. Whether we see drivers hang back and wait for later, or whether we see them get their elbows out straight away to try and get themselves up the grid, especially those who will feel they deserved more from qualifying, which, I mean, given how close the grid was, will probably be most of the grid. So yeah, it's going to be a fascinating watch, especially in this first stint, and I think things will spread out a bit after the pit stops.
Yeah, well, how could breaks in the train potentially form around here? Because, well, of course, we talked about Bahrain, is that the pit lap is so critical, and this is a track that's generally a fairly straightforward, hard to medium strategy. So, could it be potentially through that, and also maybe through wheel-to-wheel exchanges that where one car comes off badly? Could you see the train breaking up in that regard?
I could, yeah, absolutely. But I think a lot of drivers are going to save their ERS quite well around here. when the grid is so close and when the train is so long as we expect it will be. So even if you have a little bit of a squabble with another driver and lose some time to the train ahead, you should be able to use some ERS to get yourself back in it. But then, you know, it's how much time you lose in the squabble. So there's potential if drivers sort of don't think of the long game enough with overtakes in the middle sector, or potentially down towards turn 4. I can see a lot of things happening, but yeah, there's potential for the train to break up. But I personally think, and you know, my predictions haven't gone too well this season, so take this with a pinch of salt, but I think we won't get major breakups in the train until the pit stops.
Okay, well, we'll see what is going to go down as these drivers. Yeah, but there are so many action zones on this track. I'm not sure how that's going to go down, but we'll see if these drivers can handle it. The aggression level in general, because obviously we do have a lot of drivers. A lot of drivers that have carried on from last season, but a number of drivers who are, of course, new to F3, they're coming up from F4, or making PSGL debuts, or maybe returning to PSGL after a bit of a hiatus. You've got all different kinds of backgrounds, and so the grid has a very different look from last season. And what we saw last week in Bahrain, I think, was a much higher level of aggression from earlier in the race. It may just be a one-race occurrence, but potentially we could get an even better sense this week of how this grid really races relative to each other, because they really went at it in Bahrain, I think even more than we're used to in this tier.
Yeah, they really did. I mean, we don't usually expect a lot of steward reports in PSF3, at least we didn't last season, but you know, the fact that we came away last race thinking, well, the midfield could be in any order depending on who reports who, I think said a lot about the added aggression in this tier compared to last season. I think it's still early in the season. I think drivers are going to get more used to each other over the next few rounds. So things might mellow out a little bit, but it's certainly fantastic for a spectator point of view, for a neutral. Yeah, we want to see clean racing. You know, you can be aggressive while still not making anyone annoyed. So yeah, hopefully we can keep the aggression, but lose the anger from post-race from a couple of drivers that we had. But having said that, largely everyone was very happy with that race, and had a good time, which, you know, reflects our experience in the commentary box as well. It was fantastic. So yeah, may it continue as the season goes on, and I'm sure it will, with the history of PSF3 over the last couple of seasons.
Oh, it's been an absolute spectacle to watch, and yeah, we certainly had a good time with last week's race. Hopefully we're going to have just as good a time with this week's. We have had a little bit of a delay, you may have noticed. We've been trying to get Felix back in the session, and by the looks of things now that has been successful, so we can get racing back underway very, very shortly, thankfully for that, and we can get this going just in hopefully a couple of moments' time. Just as a quick note, while we have a bit of downtime though, a quick mention to our sponsor GT Omega, who of course make PSGL possible to run. A link to their site is down in the video description as always, and if you have a notion to purchase anything from that site, you can use the code PSGL at checkout for a 5% discount on all GT Omega products. So yes, we should be just seconds away from the race. Quick mention again for rain, because unlike at Bahrain, where you don't typically expect water to be pouring down, and unless it's F1 preseason testing in real life, here at Brazil it is something that's much more of a possibility, and of course we have no idea of what conditions could be thrown at us, but that is certainly something we have to keep in mind as well, and how much it changes the dynamic of the race, because, well, as I tend to say, corners that you don't even think of in the dry bear their fangs in the wet, and I think that's especially true here at Brazil.
Oh, absolutely. This track gets rained on quite a bit, I find, in the F1 games. So, and I've seen so many changeable conditions races around here where We've had sort of full wet Inter to dry back to Inter, and those kinds of things. And in this game, the sort of conditions that are too dry for Inters but too wet for slicks. Those sorts of conditions are particularly prevalent on this game and particularly difficult to drive in as well. So, I do hope we get that kind of thing, because it's really going to be a test of the drivers, and this is such a likely and fantastic track for that to happen as well. But we could just have a full dry race, but if the rain does come down, it's really going to be a different test of our drivers. We saw last season Alex Marciano in the wet just completely far ahead of everyone else, but then Spicer came back at him towards the end of the race. And
oh
there
my
it is.
goodness.
There we have it. Heavy rain. It's sort of on the ballpark, I think. It could be Inter's, but it could also be Wets. I think it's Inter's. I don't think it's enough for Wets, but we've certainly got rain. And I am excited.
Oh, I'm glad I brought up that conversation thread now, because it bleeds perfectly into this. We have rain coming down. I do think it is going to be intermediate conditions. I think I see intermediates in the pit lane as well, so that's what could be expected. But it can change in a very volatile way, the conditions around this track, and I think that's something to look out for. I would say, probably unlikely that we're going to see the rain remaining in this state for the entirety of the race to come in front of us. We'll see if it evolves, if it goes even heavier rain, or maybe it'll dry up later in the race. In that case, strategy is going to play such a role. Setup's going to play a role as well. These drivers are going to have to try and make adjustments, but maybe raise that ride height among some other changes to make the car a bit more drivable in these conditions, because the entire prospect of what we have in front of us completely changes. And of course, you mentioned Alex being so prevalent in the wet. Of course, he was prevalent everywhere last season, so strong in all aspects. But that means that the pecking order could be shuffled up from what we saw in qualifying.
It really, really could. And usually you tend to see the faster drivers having more of a gap to the less fast drivers in the wet. So, after we spent so long talking about a DRS train, we're certainly not going to get any DRS, at least to start with. But it's going to be interesting to see who manages to stick with the leaders, because I think the likes of Zinedine Hajjaj could be very, very strong in these conditions. You just get that feeling from him, you know what I mean? I expect big things from him today in these conditions. But another driver or other drivers could step up and really show their worth in the wet. You see it plenty of times. The drivers that are usually mid-grid perhaps in a league, suddenly it rains and they're challenging for the front. And equally, you can have drivers who are usually towards the front and it rains and they drop right to the back. So it's going to be an interesting one. It's really going to be quite a different test for our drivers, like I said.
Yeah, it's going to look to a completely different part of their skill set than what we saw. And, we could see as much wheel-to-wheel action as we saw in Bahrain. It's a bit less likely. Cars should spread out, but we shall see how it happens in the race to come, as we have 5 lights. And the Brazilian Grand Prix is go from the front of the grid. AGK Racing spins up the rear tyres, but away he goes, and he has got the lead as he heads in towards turn 1, tracked by Zinedine Hajjaj as they run in behind then through the first couple of corners. Contact down at the back. I believe that's Felix that's been caught up in that, or actually PLX, who's drifted the back of the field. But up front, it is indeed AGK Racing that leads from Zinedine Hajjaj. Gets a nice clean start up in front. It is intermediate tyres for the grid, as we expected, but AGK did convert that pole position, and comfortably too. We're going to see how well these drivers can adapt, can settle, can get into a rhythm in these treacherous conditions as they head uphill through Ferradura into the middle sector, and the their patience on that right foot. That throttle pedal is going to be tested to a very, very high degree as they circulate through the middle of the track. A couple of cars jumping about. I hope the lobby connection isn't going to be too bad as further back Matheus and Spyros are going to battle through Vico de Pato and actually ghosting inside each other rather bizarrely, but AGK does lead and does lead comfortably. The Romanian has gotten switched on right away. It is moving clear. What a start for the pole setter.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of teleporting going on for Spyros, so I'd keep that in mind when watching him. But Sieb down the inside, meanwhile, of Vessel further back, and could be down the inside of Devil as well into turn one. Sieb going for two cars in one go. It looks like he's got it, but Devil sweeps around the outside and keeps that place. Great racing between those two as they head through turn three now. But yeah, AGK at the front, leading comfortably at the moment, but Zinedine Hajjaj keeping him honest for now. And then Sam van Marasing struggling. Oh, big slide from the VCARB driver through turn four. Nico getting past Nick further back. I think there was a mistake from the Williams driver as Ruben tries to take advantage as well up the hill, but he can't quite get it done. And meanwhile, Sam van Marasing losing a ton of time to the top two. And it's, as I said, Daka, those top two have a bigger gap than they would in the dry, I think. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them speed off into the distance early on in this race. But who knows? Sam van Marasing might just take a few laps to get into the swing of things in the wet. I know I do in these conditions, so he might be able to catch it back up again. But AGK so strong in the latter part of that middle sector, I think.
Yeah, heading through, well, some of these last corners of the middle sector. Jun Shao, of course, just to cap off the lap, was very strong through there, and also through Mergulio, very quick through there. Zinedine, though, keeping him honest, as you said. Sam van Marasing a little less at ease with the conditions. He's missing the apexes a lot of corners and seems to be understeering quite heavily in that V-carb, I've noticed. And those top two drivers at the moment appear to be scampering up the road somewhat. We'll see if it holds out that way as further back Matheus and Devil swap places down there. The Mercedes driver to P11 up behind the two kick Cerberus. Spyros, of course, we did see him jumping around. It seems to be a tad better now, although still noticeable. Actually, it doesn't seem better at all for the Greek. Hopefully that's not going to cause too much trouble for the other drivers out on track, but he's lost contact with the rest of the runners, and from third downwards they are very tightly packed, just like you would see normally in a dry race. Sam van Marasing is certainly struggling a deal more than most of the other drivers in this race, and that's beginning to come to pass here and become very noticeable as drivers stack up behind him. As Spyros down the back of the field seems to have gone round. He didn't quite catch the start of that, but the Kick Cerber driver dropping right down the field, sliding the car out. Didn't catch the start of that Ghost, but the Kick Cerber driver, who's been all over the place in these early laps, having a big moment and sent right to the back of the field.
Yeah, I didn't quite catch it either, Daka, but I think it was probably likely a laggy piece of contact that probably caused that. But anyway, Lazard under pressure from Matheus. Down the inside goes the Mercedes into turn one. What a move from Matheus, and up ahead as well. Nick getting past Ruben for P6 with Zviadek, the other Mercedes, just behind them. Can Ruben have another go into turn four? He's got nothing left in the ERS department already in these conditions. That really shows how much he's been using. Devil as well getting past Lazard further back for P10. But meanwhile, those three just ahead, up the hill they go, and it's Nick still ahead of Ruben and Zviadek. Sam van Marasing now 2 seconds behind the top two, and Zinedine Hajjaj losing time to AGK as well. The McLaren driver, we saw how good he was in Zandvoort. It started to rain in Zandvoort, and he was very good before that. But then I think he just got the strategy wrong, didn't he, in that race last season. But here, it started to rain straight away, so he doesn't have to mess with anything to do with the strategy, at least not yet. And he's showing that he does indeed have a lot of pace in the wet, and it's too much for Hajjaj to handle at the moment.
I think he's so good at settling into the races from early laps. He always seems very switched on and moving strongly early. It's later in the race that tends to cause a bit more trouble as Spyros is out the session, and I can't say I'm very surprised. It seemed like the connection was a bit dodgy all the way through. Further back in the battle for third place, looks like Mattia Manga is going to get interested in that third position, but it looks like Sam Van Marsing quick down the straights, and too quick this time for Mattia Manga, who used a lot of battery but couldn't find a way through. Sam Van Marsing, well, the corners are providing some kind of an issue, sliding that rear end out of the Interlagos. He does seem to be able to hold on down the straights and proving to be a very tough man to pass, which is good going because there are a lot of drivers queuing up behind him all the way down to Zvidek, who was getting very close to Ruben there. Heading into turn 8 as further back. PLX side by side with Seabden heading through. Turn 9's going to get forced out to the edge of the track. Heading to Vico DePato. Can he force a move to the inside? Looks outside, gets on the grass on the entry and counter steers and has Napple now squeezing through in the Ferrari, and out onto the grass goes the Aston Martin. Now is the McLaren, a vessel around the outside and trying to get in front, and does so. PLX with a tumultuous run then here on lap 5, and after a brilliant debut race in PSF3 at Bahrain, this race not going to plan, down 7 places. Amos Devil, on the other hand, is up 7 places, and challenging Matheus in front of him looks very, very strong and impressive, and you can imagine he could bridge across to that third place train led by Sam Van Marsing, but Sam Van Marsing does look very fast, at least down the straights, and proving to be difficult to pass as Felix comes in to retire, brings his session and race to a close. So just, 16 cars are going to be left in the race as PLX gets one of the places back onto Vessel, but a long way back is up in front. Zwijnheg and Ruben also swap places. That must have been an error from the Ferraris, as there's more battling behind as Devil looks at Matheus. Well, they're not backing down in these conditions either. Devil with a huge lead through Ferradura, and again on the exit somehow catches it. Wow, these drivers, you can see the limits that they are pushing in these conditions, going absolutely all out, but you're seeing the other side of it as mistakes start to creep in here on lap 6.
Well, that's it's save of the season from Devil so far. I like to call it the golden glove for the save of the season. But yeah, Devil, very nicely done to keep that car in a straight line, but goodness me, it looked like he was gone. He was pushing Matheus up the hill. He just couldn't quite get the move done. He was desperate on the power to try and make a lunge into the next corner, and nearly paid the price, but very well done to save it. AGK continuing to extend his lead. Meanwhile, 2 seconds now to Zinedine Hajjaj, and then 2.5 to Sam Van Marsing for P3. Mattia Manga still unable to make a move for that last podium spot, but still sticking behind the V-carb. He's got 2 V-cars for company at the moment, does the Red Bull driver. As Nick is struggling to stay with them, 1.2 seconds behind is the Williams. Can Zwijnheg make a move up the hill? Not quite this time as they head through, and now I'm noticing damage as well on the front wing of Nick. He's got no front left end plate, Daka, so he's going to be really struggling for corner entry and exit speed, especially these sort of middle speed corners in the beginning of sector 2.
Mattia Manga.
Mattia Manga, here he goes on around the outside of Sam Van Marsing through the last couple of corners on the circuit, but backs out sensibly, I think, in these conditions. It's a move you can pull in the dry. In the wet, a lot more tricky. But he lives to fight another day, and he's using plenty of ERS now down towards turn 1, but so is Sam Van Marsing. He knows Mattia Manga's right there. He knows that the Red Bull driver will feel he is faster and will want to make a move, and he's just too far behind at the moment. Nico, his teammate, trying to give Sam Van Marsing some breathing room as well, but he can't quite make a move either, and they remain as they were through turn 3.
Further back, Matheus and Devil swapping places. Devil up another position, now P8. What a charge through the field from another debutant in this race, and moving through very strongly. He is getting up towards those leaders up ahead. This is phenomenal stuff. Mattia Manga drained his entire battery to try and attack, but in this lap he is having to defend as Nico goes from left to right, snapping at his heels and looking for a way through, but at the moment not able to find anything. I think Mattia Manga seems to have a lot of pace in hand, but he just doesn't have the straight line speed to pull off an overtake, and at the moment is locked in jail and having to defend while he attacks, and being held back massively in this race down in P4. The top 2 move further up the road. AGK and Zinedine still scrapping away. AGK with phenomenal adaptability and getting out in front of Zinedine. Zinedine beginning to stabilise that gap now at just over 2 seconds, and I think this could be a ding-dong battle for laps to come. And I don't know if I'm as behind Devil from Mathieu's now, and they're going to swap places once again as Mathieu's forces his way through a very tight gap down the straight. Devil now with a slipstream trying to try and come back. Mathieu's parks his car in the very middle of the circuit, and Devil with no way through has to stay back for the time being. Behind as well, Lazat having to cover off Sieb, manages to do so successfully, so Mathieu's regains that position 9. Devil back on the overtake button, but it looks like it's not going to come to pass. As Ghost, I'm also noticing that the rain appears to be easing somewhat. It's certainly not as heavy as it was at the start of the race, and I think we may be seeing a classic race in mixed conditions here at Interlagos, because I do think the conditions are improving out there, and potentially we may even go to slicks later on.
Yeah, oh my god, Devil nearly losing it again at the same corner. Goodness me, how is that car still pointing in the right direction? I do not know. But he is pushing so hard out there in that Haas, and you can tell up 7 positions. Yeah, I agree. I don't think the rain is as strong as it was at the start of the race. And, well, like I said earlier on, the conditions between slicks and inters on this game are just horrendous to drive in. And, yeah, it's really, I think that's really going to be the test. It's when the drivers decide it's time to come onto the slicks. Is anyone going to come in too early when the track looks dry, and then they go out on the slicks and find it is still feeling like an ice rink out there? So I do wonder if any of the drivers are going to make that mistake if it does indeed come back over to slicks in this race. But we're on lap 10 at the moment, and the rain is still coming down for now. Plenty of battles happening up and down the grid. And just you were mentioning about Mattia Manga being out of ERS. The interesting thing about these conditions in F1 is that usually in the dry you can tell when your opponents in front of you are running low on ERS or just aren't deploying by the little red light on the back that turns on when they're not deploying ERS. But in the wet, of course, it's always on, so you don't get that same bit of information. You have to sort of work it out just from the driver in front, what they've been doing over the last few straights. And yeah, it adds another interesting tactical element to racing.
And, well, speaking of ERS, the man in 5th place, OVR Nico, has a lot to use down that straight, and he is using it, but the gap hasn't really come down. The slipstream not as powerful, of course, and without DRS closing gaps on the straights, so difficult, so he cannot draw any nearer. Mattia as well, likewise unable to find a way through. The lap times are improving. PLX with back-to-back fastest laps, by the way, on the warpath and the comeback trail, trying to carve his way back into the race and back into contention for some points. But yeah, you can see the conditions, they are certainly improving. We'll see if these if these enters can go the distance, and if we're going to get a transition over onto the slicks. But you can see how much more difficult overtaking is proving to be, as these drivers still just sit bottled up behind Sam van Marsing, who I have to say has done a very good job despite struggling a little bit in these conditions for pace. He has kept the mistakes to a minimum and has not afforded any opportunities yet for Mattia Manga, the Italian, to find any which way through. So the Red Bull still sits frustratingly in position number 4 at the moment, and they slip to 5 seconds behind Zinedine, who is just slightly bringing the gap back down, is behind Nick, and Zvidek are going side by side. Oh, contact! As Nick got out of shape, just about manages to save it, but understeers around Jun Shao, and behind Ruben tries to take full advantage, slips past the Mercedes, and looking for one more potentially behind the Williams. He's on an overtake button too, and closing fast. Can he find a way through? Heading up towards turn number 1, goes towards the outside of Nick with that damage. Can he hold him back? Here comes Ruben in the Ferrari, gets half a car length in front and fully in front on the brakes into turn 1, seizes 6th position, and now he can try and get after that pack in front, who have slipped a little way up the road after that moment between Nick and Zvidek. Opened up the gap. Nick defending valiantly with that wing damage, but wow, that one could have ended in tears, and Zvidek, I think, will be less than pleased with how that one has ended up, now down into 8th place, and Ruben will try and bridge across to that 3rd place battle. But I think the pace will be there as Sam continues to struggle, and Mattia looking towards turn 8 is going to go lay on the brakes, or does he? Backs out just last minute, and I think that would have been 2 cars spearing off had he committed to that. So Mattia Manga probing, looking for any which way through, but Sam van Marsing is still defending so solidly and holding on to that podium place.
Yeah, he's doing very well. The top 2 well out of sight at the moment. for everyone else. But Sam van Mersing knows that, and he knows that he probably can tell that Mattia Mango is faster than him, and as long as he can keep the Red Bull behind, he has a very good shot at a podium today after the disappointment of last week. But what a move that was from Ruben, or a double move I should say. But look, we could get 3 wide into turn 1 here between Ruben, Nick and Sviatek. Nick round the outside, he's got incredible straight line speed on that Williams, but Ruben late on the brakes. Brilliant stuff from the Ferrari.
Switchback.
He stays ahead for now, but it's a switchback from Nick, even with the wing damage. He tries to go around the outside, Max Verstappen style at turn 3. He can't quite do it. There's contact down towards turn 4. They get away with it. Mateusz and Sviatek side by side further back as well. As 2x2 nearly into turn 4, but Ruben stays ahead. Mateusz passed Nick as well. 2 in 1 for the Mercedes. It could be 3 in another corner for him as he heads up the hill down the inside of Ruben. Oh, and they make contact. Nick trying to find the inside line that opens up after they tangle wheels, but they've just about gotten away with it. They're still side by side through the middle sector. Has Ruben finally got ahead? No. Mateusz down the inside of the next corner. They're still side by side all the way through sector 2. Incredible stuff between these two. Surely Mateusz backs out now. He does, but he is on the warpath in that Mercedes on this lap.
Unbelievable action then. They were still going side by side for the back. PLX and Devil. PLX again making up plenty of places after that poor start. It appears to have nearly stopped raining. What's going on, Ghost?
Oh, PLX and Devil came to bear down the straight just as he flicked away from them, Daka. It was, they just made contact going down towards the line, and Devil span all the way out into the wall. He's lost half his front wing, and I think PLX has gotten away with it, but he might not get away with it in Steward's Dakar. I am not sure, but that is all I will comment on that for the rest of this one. But he'll be happy to at least be back into P9 as Nico and Sam van Mersing side by side up the hill. Meanwhile, the two V-Cubs have swapped places while we were watching the carnage in the midfield, and it's Nico now onto the podium.
Wow, what a way to carve through. Mattia Mango lost out to him somewhere too. Didn't quite catch that one. The rain has stopped down on track, by the way, and 2 cars have decided to bite that bullet. Lezad and IRT. We've got to keep a very close eye on those 2 cars. But getting on those hard tyres, they're not going to be up to temperature, and I think it's going to be a struggle out there at the moment. But we'll see if anyone's going to bite that bullet. Up in front, Zinedine has managed to claw back AGK Racing, and that means the pit lap's going to be so vital, and they're going to go their separate ways here. AGK goes into the pits, and Zinedine extends, just sets the fastest lap of the race. And looking at Lezad's pace out there on the track, well, it does seem, and yeah, I'm not sure if this is maybe too early. We shall see. It's certainly going to be difficult out there. That crossover is coming soon. A number of cars have come in, but I think those cars, they're so hard to switch on in these conditions. AGK is going to need a big outlap here.
I've been riding a ball with Nick and Lezad. This is far too early, Daka. AGK
he's hit the
again.
Wall.
And yeah, he's hit the wall. Look at him. He's spinning out the pit lane. It's far, far too early. Nico and Sviatek have made the same mistake. And AGK, I said earlier on in this race, this could happen. They might make the mistake of coming in too early. It can be deceiving. The track looks dry, and it's really, really not. And AGK, look at him through turn 4, just losing the rear. And that's what Nick and Lezad have been doing all of the last lap. And I think once again, AGK might be throwing a race win away from a poor strategy decision. Look at this, Daka.
He cannot keep the car in a straight line, weaving about all over the place. I think these guys should even extend further than that. That looked horrendous. As up in front, Sam van Mersing finally makes a mistake, and Mattia Mango draws alongside. Zinedine has come in from the lead.
Still think it's too early.
And I think we'll get a lot of pit stops in response, though, as Sam and Mattia go their separate ways. We'll see if Mattia can take advantage of that as Sam speeds in the pit lane. After such a great defense of that podium, has it all falling apart. Hards are going to go on, of course. They will easily get to the end of the race. There are still more drivers extending because it is so miserable out there for all these drivers. PLX has gone onto the mediums, which I think they may go the distance, but we shall see. It's going to be tough, but they will have an advantage earlier on. AGK Racing emerging, but look at that gap, Ghost. Yeah. It is tremendous as Ruben's has gone off down there at turn 1. He's gone off at the back, beginning of the Senna S, and a full safety car comes out, and all of a sudden, staying out looks like an even better move for these race leaders. Mattia Mango, after such a frustrating first stint, How well has this worked out for him?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And yeah, they all came in far too early. This safety car is actually a massive lifeline for all those who've come in. I still think it's too early. I think even if they came in this lap, it would be too early without the safety car. But yeah, massive lifeline to all those who came in. And Mattia Manga, well, on the one hand, he's going to be leading this race on the slick tyre. And, well, we saw from the quali pace that they're very close together in the dry, these drivers. But on the other hand, I think he'll probably know that if he had... if he had been able to stay out and we hadn't had the safety car, I think he could have a very substantial lead in this race, as Nappel also gets a 10-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So that is going to be a big problem for him. Sam van Marising, does he come in to serve that penalty? Yeah, he does. Sensible, I think, from the VCARB driver. He will drop all the way to the back, but at least he won't have a 10-second penalty. He nearly got one coming in again there. He was sideways as he went over the line, but he's gotten away with it. And, well, added drama to this race. Zinedine has actually gotten into the lead here as a result of that safety car. When Mattia Manga, I'm sure if without that safety car, he would have had multiple seconds of a lead in this race.
My oh my, well, because of the way the delta works and how it's almost so fast down the main straight, there isn't actually that much of a difference between the pit delta under safety car. But yeah, Mattia Manga jumped by Zinedine in the end, and Sieb going off strategy from these guys. We are in that phase where it is actually a little bit contentious as to what is the best tyre to go to the end of the race on. This is around about the time when you would see pit stops off the hard onto the medium. The medium can go a good distance here, and I think you're seeing that drivers going their separate ways in terms of the tyre choice down the line. You can see most of the drivers up front have gone onto the hards, but Sieb on the mediums is very interesting, and one of the big winners of that goes right up into the podium places. Started down there in 13th on the grid, I should say. And in these early laps is going to be very competitive, but I think what tyre is the best tyre to be on is a little bit of a question mark. I'm really not sure.
Yeah, I'm surprised that many of the front runners went into the hards, to be honest. Nappel's into the pits to serve that penalty. But yeah, I really am surprised. I thought it was mediums all the way from here, to be honest. But you know, maybe those front drivers have made the right decision. Maybe they're all playing follow the leader after Zinedine came in for the hards and AGK did the same. But yeah, most drivers going on the mediums here, and they are going to have a significant advantage at the first part of this stint. They will drop off towards the end, of course, but will they drop off enough for it to be worth it to go on the hards at this point? I don't know. Sieb's in a really good position here. And so look who else is. PLX, who had a disastrous start to this race. He found his way back up the grid. He made some daring moves to do it, and also was involved in a bit of a crash, which I'm sure we'll see the outcome of later. But he is in P5 on fresh-ish mediums, with 3 cars ahead of him on hards, and Sieb didn't show, you know, he was on the pace in qualifying, but he hasn't shown incredible pace so far this race. But, you know, there were times last season where Sieb really stepped up, so perhaps today could be one of them too.
Yeah, I believe that Monaco Grand Prix, he was exceptional there. We'll see if that's going to follow suit here. As well, we may get a late call for safety car in, but the field hasn't quite come together as of yet. Actually, Nick is a long way behind, so I don't believe we'll get back to racing on this lap. Probably next one after that, with Zinedine leading. Of course, AGK, after, well, that strategic gamble has had another side effect in the fact that he now has the worst tyres in the field. We'll see what he can make of that. But he's certainly going to be on the back foot, at least in these early laps, you would think. And of course, he couldn't come in like Lezad could, for example, to get tyres on, or Spyros, I believe, who went onto the Inters earlier, because he has so much track position to lose. So he's had to try and brave it out, and we'll see what he can make of it. But yeah, AGK Racing in a tough spot after a brilliant start to the race. How often have we said that in the last few rounds, both this and last season in PSF3 races, just don't seem to go his way after showing such incredible pace. On the other hand, Zinedine Hajjaj, after being gapped in the opening laps, now is in the ascendancy, but despite all the pace he has, you'd have to think there are threats from behind. And IRTC, if he can get in front of Mattia Manga soon on, because of course if you're in third place you are kind of in jail, so to speak. We saw that to some effect in the first round as well, as AGK and Zinedine just swapped places harmoniously at the front. So Sieb, can he break that up? Can he use the extra grip of those mediums to make an early impression on those top two?
Yeah, that's going to be his goal. And, well, I know it's early in the season, but Zinedine Hajjaj, you've got to have a little bit of luck over the course of a season to win a championship. And, well, he's gotten that very early on. I really do think without the safety car, he'd be in a very bad spot compared to all those who stayed out. But he's in the lead. He's going to lead us off for the safety car restart. We'll see when he goes for it. But Mattia Manga is going to be right behind, and he'll be hungry for a big result after Bahrain was perhaps a little bit of a disappointment for him last week. As Zinedine has gone well before the pit entry, and he's caught Mattia Manga sleeping. Here comes AGK as well. Round the outside of Sieb, he tries to go. Our pole sitter goes for it late on the brakes, but Sieb's even later. Brilliant defending from the Williams, and he stays ahead, but there's movement further back as well. Sam van Marissing round the outside of Mathieusz through turn 3. Nico follows him through, and Matisse and Vessel side by side as well for P6. Can Matisse get it done on the inside? It looks like he can at turn 4. Just gets ahead before the braking zone. Sam van Marissing looking for something as well in the background. PLX round the outside of AGK through turn 4 and turn 5, but he gets a penalty, does the McLaren driver behind. PLX up to P4. He is flying at the moment, is the F4 champion, and Mathieusz getting past Nico as well further back. Napel trying to follow him through. Nico's had a horrible restart to this race. Down the inside he goes, hits the back of the Mercedes. There's so much contact happening right now, Dakar, but it looks like they're all getting away with it. Side by side again, down towards the final braking zone. Napel on the inside, there's more contact. Nico onto the grass, he loses 2 more places perhaps. Yes, he does, and it's been a total disaster this lap for the V-Carb.
I don't know if Napel was trying to give it back. He's up in front. Sieb is going to take advantage. Moves up and almost into the lead at Zinedine, but he slops in to P2. Behind, look at how close they are. As around the outside goes Matisse, and another Aston Martin moves up. The McLarens have been swapped by the Aston Martins on this restart, and AGK is all out of shape. Those hards just aren't switched on as Sieb to the race lead now. Head towards the Interlagos, but there's so much action as Vessel was forced onto the grass, and there's contact between Matisse and AGK. AGK holds on to 5th as forced well off the road as Vessel rejoins it side by side. And Mathieusz trying to move up another position, gets on the grass of the entry to Ferraduro, loses out to Matisse and possibly to Vessel as well. The McLaren driver sticks it to the inside of turn 8, now into turn 9 with the Mercedes on the inside of the McLaren. Tries to get his way through outside of Miko Tabato, completely boxed in, looks for a way around the outside. Vessel forces him onto the curb, and again both cars nearly spun right around, but Mathieusz does manage to seize away that place. Wow, the aggression levels are not turned up to 11, they're turned up to 12 on this restart. As further back, further up in front I should say, PLX again charging. Look at how much faster these mediums are. He moves up 1 and nearly 2. He dives to the inside of Zinedine. Gets level under braking. Zinedine forced, compromised onto a tight line. Forces PLX off the road though. Onto the curb. Mattia Manga trying to take advantage. Has to slot in behind. And one story that you have to take away from this restart: the mediums are switched on and the hard runners are struggling immensely to contain them.
Yeah, they just have to stay with them and they'll be better towards the end, but can they? Can they stay with them? They're so much quicker on these mediums at the moment. Sieb into the lead of this race. What a chance he has to win this one, but Zinedine Hajjaj is going to be right there. If he can stay with him, he is going to have a huge advantage in the last few laps, but that is a big if as Mathieusz and AGK now side by side. AGK down the inside he goes, but it's going to be the outside for the next corner, and Mathieusz brakes late enough to hold him off. The two McLarens nearly side by side, as well as Vettel just sits behind his teammate for now. Down towards the last braking zone they go, and single file for now, but Nick not interested in single file at all. Down the inside of Zviadek into that last braking zone, and he makes it up to P12. This is brilliant racing up and down the grid. Zinedine Hajjaj setting the fastest lap, but no moves being made. It's 3 wide though, further back, as AGK loses 2 places down the straight. Vettel and Nico side by side now, just ahead of him, and it's Mateusz just watching in his mirrors, waiting for something to go horribly wrong. It might still do. AGK down the inside, it's 3 wide on the run to turn 4. Surely not. Someone has to back out this one. AGK does, and Vettel and Napple now go wheel to wheel as well on the exit. It's going to be side by side all the way up the hill. Nico's going to be watching and hoping that they don't take him out as well, that they head all the way through that corner. Fantastic stuff. And AGK to the back of his teammate. Contact. AGK's round, loses a ton of places, and well, it doesn't look like any visible damage to the McLaren at least, but he is going to be a frustrated man in that cockpit. It's yet another race that AGK has started on the front row, pole today, and it's just not happened for him. He is going to be so frustrated.
Ghost, you are afforded a drink of water, my friend, as we head on to lap 24 with Zinedine pouncing on Sieben. PLX trying to follow through, right up behind the two Frenchmen, swarm to the front of the grid and snatch away that lead from Sieben. It looks as though Zinedine is able to hang on in there on those hards as the gap between the two compounds begins to shrink. Sam van Marsing moves up in front of Matisse as AGK, predictably, I think, retires from the race in the pit lane. So he will see no more of this Brazilian Grand Prix. Matisse looks back to the inside of turn 4 at the Interlagos, decides to back out of that one, but these guys are a long way back from that top 4 who run in formation now, with Zinedine now leading. It looked very comfortable when he was sat behind Sieb. So I imagine, even though we've seen other hard runners struggling, and Mattia Manga also managing to hang on in there, but Zinedine looked like he had the measure of Sieb when he's running behind him. Now he leads the trade. It's far from over, and these medium runners are going to snap at his heels all the way through, but Zinedine at least can contain these guys for the moment and can stretch it out until his tyres are better in the closing laps.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be his plan. Mattia Manga will have that plan in mind as well, but he is struggling a little more to stay with them. He is in the DRS, but he's going to have to hope they battle hard now. PLX, though, down the inside. Zinedine Hajjaj not interested in fighting him. Matisse in the background getting up to P5 as Mateusz tries to follow him through. Down the inside he goes from the VGOB of Sam van Marsing, who's trying to stay with him. Round the outside of turn 3 they go. It's side by side once again, 2 by 2 on the run to turn 4. Who is going to get in front here? It's the two VGOBs that look to make the moves, and they have done. Nico up to P8, Sam van Marsing up to P6 as he looks to recover after that 10-second penalty he got for speeding in the pit lane. He's done a fantastic job to get himself back in the top 6, but the top 4 is looking out of reach already. What's happened to Vettel?
Vettel was looking towards the inside of Ferradura, but just understeered, got on the curb, and caught the rear wheel, I believe, of Nico, and that sent him tumbling back down the order, down to P11, but he isn't just about in the train, but he's had another fairly disastrous restart to this race and has slipped right to the rear of that trade, just in front of Nick then only in that bunch. Further up in front, it is PLX still leading from Zinedine. Can Sieb try and break up that order? He's closing very fast, but he's going to run out of space as they swap for the lead, and PLX is going to duly tuck in behind Zinedine very nicely then as they swap again. Sam van Marsing moves back up into position number 5, but 4 seconds adrift. But yeah, Sam with a really nice drive back through it. You'd have to say he's maximised his results so far on a night where he has looked to be struggling at times. So up the front, Zinedine Hajjaj leads PLX, leads Sieb, leads Mattia Manga, who looks much more comfortable holding on to these guys now, and there doesn't seem to be much danger of these guys being caught, because that gap, which was created on just the first lap after the restart, has now been established out to over 4 seconds, and it looks like we have a quartet that's going to duke it out for the win. Zinedine, PLX, Sieb and Mattia Manga. Who would have thought it was these 4 that would be battling it out at the front when this race got underway?
Wow, yeah, especially PLX, who was down 8 places on the first few laps, remember. And here he is in P2. Bit of a mistake from him, though, into the last braking zone, locked the rears, and now he's going to be vulnerable to the Williams of IRTC behind if he's interested in making a move, but it doesn't look like he is. That's surprising. I thought he'd definitely go for it here, but he wants to save that ERS a little bit more, and just sticks behind him for now. Matisse, meanwhile, down the inside of Sam Van Marising, more contact between the V-Carbs and the Aston Martin. This time it's Matisse who gets ahead. Vessel retires in the pit lane. He had a disaster from turn 4. It's a horrible day for McLaren with a double DNF, but it's 3 wide, nearly into turn 4 between the two V-Carbs and Matisse. Matisse again having to defend from Sam Van Marising, who's forced the long way round. He's now side by side with his teammate up the hill once again. Napple in the background, the two Mercedes as well lurking there too, waiting for something to go wrong, but nothing has yet. Mateusz down the inside loses the rears though, and has to stay behind in the end. But there's so many lunges going on here. It's a mistake from Nico. Could there be something from Napple? No, he sticks behind. He doesn't want to send it into that corner today. But wow, this is fantastic stuff for P5. And well, you'd think this was for the win, but we've got our own 4-way battle for the win going on further ahead.
Which, to be honest, is much calmer and more civilised. Look at Steve, who's drawing closer again, but not using any battery down the straights, I've noticed. So he seems to be content sitting in behind as well, as Zinedine just begins to pull these guys along now in this battle for the lead. And the others just being patient, I imagine, trying to carve out a move later on. As further back, Mateusz picks up what could be a crucial time penalty. He and Napple are stuck with time penalties for the moment, as they're going to swap up in front. Sam Van Marising to the inside of Matisse, and it's much more standard stuff this lap in that fight. Or is it? Nico's looking very interested in that position 6, but in the end remains behind the other Frenchman for now. 6 cars in this train as Napple off the track at Ferradura, rejoined. Didn't catch the start of that, but the Ferrari driver slipping to the back of the train. Not sure if that was all his own doing, because I don't believe he was side by side with another car, but the Ferrari manages to recover it and stay in the fight, but lost out, I believe, just the one place in the end. But Napple, that was a heart and mouth moment, but managing to keep his race alive.
Yeah, I think he just locked the rears going up the hill, and nearly paid the price big time, but he did lose 2 positions, and with that time penalty to his name as well, could be very costly. Another change for the lead. That's PLX calmly once again swapping with Zinedine Hajjaj for the lead of this race as they head down towards turn 4. I don't think they're as interested in challenging towards that corner, but Matisse meanwhile back up into P5 as well. The two V-Carbs duking out, but Zinedine is interested after all. He sends it down the inside and makes the move back into the lead again. PLX just has to watch in behind. That's the two V-Carbs side by side through turn 4 once again, and Nico getting past this time. I think we saw team orders at Mercedes on the previous lap with Mateusz, as soon as he got his penalty, pretty much letting Sviatek through on the run to turn 4, and Sviatek now looking to challenge the cars ahead, and Mateusz just trying to keep Napple behind for now, and that's going to be made a lot easier with that mistake. Napple into the wall he goes, and we've got another safety car in this race. That's going to bring everyone right close together again. It will equalise the strategies as well, presumably. But Napple just cannot get that car out of the wall. He was stuck. He was beached completely in the grass. And, well, his front wing completely off. And he'll be very happy to see that safety car, but yeah.
Oh my goodness!
Oh my goodness, Zinedine Hajjaj, championship leader with a 10-second penalty. That is completely unnecessary. He is going to be kicking himself in that cockpit. And wow, this race has taken an incredibly unexpected turn. It's going to be soft tyres for everyone to the end here, but Zinedine Hajjaj with a 10-second penalty that is going to drop him all the way to the back potentially.
What on earth? Zinedine Hajjaj, and Napple gets a 10-second penalty. That may be out of frustration, though, given what has just happened on that last lap. But he will still have a chance for points without that penalty, but now that's set him back no end. But Zinedine, my goodness, after driving a virtually flawless race up to this point, a critical time penalty. It's such a critical moment. The entire field have come together, with the exception of the two Greeks in the Kick Saubers, who have decided to stay out and gain at least a little bit of track position, but I don't believe that's going to amount to much for them. I imagine they're just going to get swamped by the other drivers behind on much, much better tyres. But my goodness, that, again, It's very early to be discussing that, but I think potentially we could look at that as a very defining moment this season. Zinedine Hajjaj, who has got both, well, no, he's only got one pole position this season, but he did take the win in Bahrain after fighting through against Evie Mateos, has looked the class of the field throughout the first 2 rounds, getting the most critical time penalty, and it's seemingly unrecoverable. The grid is going to be by and large bunched up. That penalty, no matter what, by the looks of things, is going to be massively costly, and it changes the way as well that every other driver is going to approach these last few laps.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness me. That is, I mean, we've all done it, Daka. Anyone who's played the F1 game, we've all done that. Just under no pressure at all, getting a pit lane speeding penalty. He's come in to serve it in the pits, so he's going to drop all the way to the back. Nappel as well will serve his. Did you notice he cleverly put on the hards as soon as he got his penalty, just so he wouldn't waste a set of softs? So now he's going to go back onto the softs after serving that penalty. But yeah, Zinedine Hajjaj all the way down to P12, and well, Daka, we could see some very desperate moves in these closing laps from the championship leader as he tries to recover all of those lost positions. And well, I know who's certainly going to be regretting retiring in the pits now. AGK Racing. This is why you don't retire in the pits unless you're absolutely sure there's no chance. If you've been lapped, fair enough, but retiring in the pits when you're on the lead lap, this can always happen and you will always regret it. And well, PLX now, Sieb and Mattia Manga, everyone really in those top 5, 6, 7, 8, well, top 6 positions really, because the 2 Sauber AIs are going to hold up Sam van Marising a little. But wow, anyone can win this race now, Daka. Anyone at all, especially with how much carnage we've already seen. These last few laps, I don't know if our voices can take it.
I certainly hope they can, as the field is going to come back together with Nappel just rejoining it, but it looks as though we are going to get another lap behind the safety car and another moment to prepare and anticipate what could go on in front. Just to cover this, EPLX qualified reasonably well, but found himself nowhere in the first stint, shuffled all the way down the field, now leads the race. I believe he's 15th at one point, now runs in P1. IRT Sieb was essentially just running a fairly anonymous race, qualified in 13th position, now sits in the pound seat in P2, and Mattia Manga, well, looked like a race, well, that could have fallen into his hands at one point, but he had a frustrating first stint as well, locked up behind Sam van Marising. Maybe the driver that's the least out of place given where they were in this lead fight, but he himself runs a very competitive P3, and of course all these guys were ahead of the race earlier, but without Zinedine in that lead fight, the dynamic changes massively, and EPLX, the F4 champion, well, winning does become a habit. We'll see if it proves to be true here for the Frenchman, because from a race that looked buried at one point, now has an unbelievable opportunity here.
He really, really does. And well, I do wonder if that incident earlier on the straight is going to be in the forefront of his mind. Does he think he was at fault? Is he thinking he's going to get a penalty? Because it can really mess with your mentality as a driver. If you think you might get a penalty, you will drive to try and mitigate that. You might try and get a 5-second gap to certain cars behind. I saw a driver a few weeks ago in a different league think he might get a penalty for an incident earlier in the race, and the gap was just over 5 seconds to the driver behind, but he was safely in P2. He crashed and DNF'd at the final corner because he was so desperate to try and make that 5 seconds up. So yeah, we'll see what happens, whether PLX has that in his mind, whether that'll affect him. But the safety car in, and PLX gets us off to speed straight away. Sieb just about getting off to speed in the background nicely, but so many cars side by side further back. It's 4 wide, it's 5 wide down to turn 1. Surely not. Sam van Marising down the inside. There's contact inevitably after all of that. Sam van Marising all the way down to the bottom of the grid. Nappel around the outside of Mathieusz, but it's carnage straight away in these last few laps, and Zinedine Hajjaj is already up to P7, Daka.
How on earth has that happened? As the entire group behind the two Sabre AIs has erupted into chaos, and Zinedine Hajjaj, well, I didn't see how, but he moves up into P7, and all of a sudden is staring at the back of this train. He could salvage a very strong result out of this. Up at the front, EVE PLX does lead, and lead comfortably from IRTC by about 0.6 of a second. He will try if he can to break the DRS, but always such a difficult task here at Brazil. 0.7 of a second the gap. Mattia Manga wasn't quite as settled on that restart. Has Nico up behind him, unable to find a way through though. They all slot into line. A group of 7 for the lead, actually a group of 8. Nick has managed to join the back of that train as well, but does have a penalty to his name as they clock onto the 34th lap of 36. 3 laps to go here in Interlagos. It's been an absorbing race with so many twists and turns in a narrative. How much more drama will be provided in these final 3 laps? PLX does lead, Sieb does follow. Now DRS is activated all the way down this train, and IRTC, will he wait? Will he bide his time? He has got an incredible opportunity here to take an unexpected win here in PSF3. IRTC, a driver who finished 23rd in the championship last season, now runs in second position, staring down the leader, who of course could be in the stewards room after this race, looking at him for a way through. IRTC in second place, Mattia Manga third. It's all finely poised, but I think these drivers are all just biding their time for the moment.
Yeah, they are. We're going to get fireworks in these last couple of laps. Zinedine Hajjaj is right behind Sviatek. I'm going to be riding on board with him to see what he's doing. Through the final braking zone they go, and Zinedine with a brilliant exit compared to Sviatek. He's probably going to go for a move into turn 1 here, but he's so low on ERS. But the Mercedes has got a little bit more, but he's probably not expecting a move from the Haas. Sieb goes into the lead of the race at the front. PLX and Mattia Manga side by side as well. PLX down the inside of turn 2, outside for turn 3. They still go side by side all the way down to turn 4. Zinedine Hajjaj did make that move. He's up to P6, but Sieb is leading away, and PLX round the outside of Mattia Manga, who loses out to Nico as well at turn 4, who goes all the way off the road and has to concede that position in the end. But Zinedine already now up to P5 as he goes up the hill on the inside of Matisse. He gets that position. Napple retires on the exit of turn 4. He's hit the wall by the looks of things, but Zinedine Hajjaj still might win this race, Daka. Who knows?
He's very, very close to the race leader, all things considering, but it's going to be a long way from here for the Frenchman. But still, what a recovery this is proving to be. But IRTC does lead the way from PLX. He has nearly a full battery too. He got that move done so efficiently on the last lap. He's got everything, but he didn't get a good exit off of Jun Shao, and so PLX will be applying that pressure. He's deploying his battery early then, sizing up Sieb, looking for the race lead, decides which way to go, goes to the right hand side in the end, and is going to sweep through into the race lead. It's PLX who leads the way in Interlagos. Can Sieb strike back though? He cuts the inside of turn 2, trying to shave as much off his line as he can. Now back on the overtake button and looks to reclaim the lead to the left this time, down to Retro Pasta, and IRT Sieb leads the way in Interlagos behind Mattia Manga, and Nico swapping away as Nico snaps at the heels of the Red Bull, gets forced out to the very edge of the track, fades away to the inside of turn 6 at Ferradura, but can't quite get it. I think Mattia Manga holds it around the outside. Nico tries to be late on the brakes, sticks the nose in, but at Pinarino I think Mattia Manga is going to see him off, so Mattia Manga holds the podium. But up front, how could this come to a conclusion? RTC and EVE PLX, it's a shocking scene at the front as two drivers who would have never expected to duel for the win are going to battle it out on the final straight, with Sieb leading. He has the big battery advantage and deploying it now. IRT Sieb going for home here. Can he see it through? He's nearly half a second clear, and IRT Sieb out of nowhere is going to take one of the most unexpected victories I have seen in PSF3. Sieb wins it from PLX, with Mattia Manga taking away third place. A photo finish with Nico and Zinedine flashing towards the line. That's your top 5 for Matisse Zajevik, Matthias, IRT Nick. It'll be Sam van Mersing closing out the grid there in the end. My goodness, what a finale, what a race. A race that was so absorbing, the narrative changing so many times. An incredible story has been written, and a winner that you could have never expected. IRT Sieb, again 23rd in the PSF3 Championship last season, takes the race win, for lack of better words, out of nowhere. Wow.
Brazil delivers again, Daka. I mean, I think I'm yet to see a bad race on this circuit in 5 years of league racing. Honestly, it is incredible the races that come out of this track, and today was no exception. I think we pretty much had everything. We have an unexpected winner, a late safety car, another safety car that was a huge amount of luck for the championship leader. Changeable conditions. We had Spyros putting the lag in Interlagos. We had, we had Zinedine Hajjaj getting a time penalty at the end for speeding in the pit lane out of nothing. Can you name anything that could happen in a race? It happened today, and wow, what a race it was. I mean, who can call driver of the day, Daka? We're going to have to, but Sam van Mersing somehow getting a point in the end out of it all, and we didn't have time, because I was yabbing basically, because we didn't have time to run through the order, but I mean, what more can you say, really?
Oh my goodness, I think that is a race I will not forget for some time. That is for sure. I will just run through the results. It was IRTC taking away the race victory from EVE PLX. Again, PLX, Stewards inquiry pending on that one, I do believe. Mattia Manga takes third place, just holding off Nico and Zinedine, who had an incredible recovery in the last few laps, but wow, one costly mistake in the end offset his charge to what looked like a race win for much of that race. EVE Matisse takes away his sixth position, always in the wars. Then the two Mercedes drivers who seem to be locked together for much of that race. It is Zweideg ahead of Matthias. Then it is IRT Nick and Sam van Mersing. They are all of your finishers. So yeah, a lot of drivers not seeing out the checkered flag. You had the two Kick Saubers who unfortunately connection issues were in the way, as Ghost said, Spyros putting the lag into Lagos. What a brilliant line that is. Not seeing out the checkered flag, though, was Napple late in the race. What a race, again, of what ifs for Napple. Vessel, AGK Racing, that is yet another one bites the dust, you could say, in terms of opportunities for a win. He was so fast in these early laps, but again, it is heartbreak for the McLaren driver. CPI Rubin, AMS Devil, after that incident with PLX, and then NLR Felix, who had a number of issues with up at home and also with his equipment, which is why he ended up retiring in the end. So that brings Interlagos to a close, Ghost. I'm just catching my breath after what we've just seen out on track, because yeah, that was a different one. There are not many races quite like that.
Wow, incredible that was. Absolutely loved that. From start to finish, there was drama, there were fantastic moves, there were crashes, there were major errors, there were poor strategy decisions. I mean, there were safety cars. Like I said, this had absolutely everything. And we're on race 2, by the way. This is round 2 of this season. There's plenty more to come. And wow, what a win for IRTC. But I can't give anyone else driver of the day personally, Daka. I don't know about you. I mean, there's so many drivers you could give it to, but at the end of the day, it's an unexpected win for him based on, like you said, 23rd in the standings last season. I mean, he's had some very standout drives, like you mentioned, but I don't think he came to this race expecting to have a chance to win it, but he took that chance, and at the end of the day, in a race that chaotic, the driver who takes the win, especially one so unexpected, for me, has to get driver of the day.
Who else? That's how I look at it, really. That was, I would say, fairly set in stone. Yes, for IRTC. Just a remarkable drive. Again, seemingly out of nowhere. Benefited a lot from that safety car, but you'd have to say, played it right on strategy as well. That's a big part of that. Remember, of course, everyone starts on the same tyres. The conditions are the same for everyone, and IRTC made all the right decisions and came through in the end to take away a dramatic race win in what was an absorbing Brazilian Grand Prix. As for the championship standings, I do believe Zinedine will still be leading it. He got away 6 points from this race, so he's going to be on 23 points. PLX may be the closest, I believe, on what will be 22. I think, after taking second place on the road in that Grand Prix. Do correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that should be right enough, barring fastest lap. I'm not actually sure who got that point. May need to double check that one.
I think it was Zinedine Hadjaj, I believe.
If it were Zinedine, then that would put him on 24 points. So too clear at the top. So he does walk away from this round with a championship lead, but I don't imagine that's going to be much consolation for a driver who looked to have that race win, not in hand, but certainly was in the prime position to do so until that pivotal speeding penalty. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. It just shows it can happen to anyone at any time. It's early in the season. There's not even that much pressure at the moment on any of the drivers to get the results. We had it was a safety car as well. And it can happen at any time. You just make that critical error when you don't need to. It was so unnecessary, but like I said, we've all done that at some point, and Zinedine Hadjaj, unfortunately for him, was the one to do it today. So, he's certainly not invincible. After last week, where he still managed to win a pretty crazy Bahrain race, and now this week where he had made that mistake on the strategy, I'm still very, very confident he would have been multiple seconds behind, probably over 5 seconds behind, if even perhaps even more, if the safety car hadn't come out. So he got that luck, and then he's thrown it away just as AGK did, but still a fantastic recovery in the last few laps nonetheless. He profited off of all the carnage, and sometimes I know drivers can get taken out due to bad luck sometimes. You can just be in the wrong place at the wrong time, but I don't know about you, Daka, but in my years of commentary and racing, I just tend to find that the best drivers tend to avoid those major incidents a lot more often than others, and Zinedine Hadjaj showed that today. If he had been caught up in that incident, he would have gotten nowhere near 5th place today.
Yeah, it's certainly, and I imagine it's also the drivers that, and I do want to comment on this because it has been fairly prevalent in these first 2 rounds. Also, the drivers that I find are the most successful are also the ones that see out the race no matter what has happened. Mm-hmm. And we have seen in each of these first 2 rounds quite a lot of retirements in the pit lane. And this is something I don't want to see, because I think it's a better look for the league if we have a lot of drivers that do see out the race. But just as a word of advice, it's always better to see out the race, give yourself a chance. Because you never know how the race can turn, and I think this race may have been the best possible proof of that. Again, fortunes changed for so many drivers. You couldn't have predicted how things could have gone, but I think just persevere. Even if it hasn't gone your way, there's still so much room for improvement, and room for your fortunes to change in the later laps. So I do hope we see less of that as the season goes on.
Yeah, 100% agree. You saw today so many drivers retiring in the pit lane, and then we had a late safety car and complete chaos. Anyone who retired in the pit lane could easily have gotten some points from today and still had fun races as well. Because at the end of the day, there's fighting for championships, and then there's also having fun. And it's not fun to drive around at the back on your own, but those safety cars at the end bring you straight back into it, and you can have some fun in the last few laps. So there's always a chance, and particularly on a track like Brazil, you never ever would see me retiring in the pit lane unless I had like an unfixable rear wing damage or something. In Brazil, anything can happen on this circuit. So yeah, but it's the same for any track. And I fully agree. See out the race, and you'll find that those results will come in, rather than giving up for something going wrong. So yeah, that's all I would say. Not naming any names, as Dakar didn't, but yeah, I fully agree with you.
Well, we'll see how things change. Of course, we've talked about tracks that produce chaos, tracks where rain could be a possibility. Well, next race is in Spa, so we'll see if we get more of the same. Another track where, of course, rain, the heavens can open. There at Spa-Francorchamps for the Belgian Grand Prix. Make sure to tune in for that one, because my oh my, PSF3 is an absolute spectacle, and we will love to have as many people on board to pay witness to it, because I think we could have an incredible championship in front of us. That is to look forward to in the coming round. That is, of course, on the 10th of March, the Belgian Grand Prix. Make sure not to miss it. It could be another incredible show here in PSF3. But I think for PSF3, that is going to be it for tonight. So once again, thank you to PSGL. Thank you to GT Omega as well for sponsoring PSGL. Thank you to all the drivers for putting on a great show. Thank you to all of you for watching, and thank you to Ghost for being alongside me. As always, a pleasure. So that is going to bring this race to a close. An absorbing Brazilian Grand Prix finally in the books. Make sure to tune in next week for Spa. But for myself and Ghost, it is goodbye for now, and until next time, we'll see you later.